Our next question comes from Skim Shark Mike, who says, is it better to train in Muay Thai, BJJ, and Judo, or just stick to MMA lessons? Yes. Yes, it's better to train in everything. Logic would suggest just doing MMA classes, but almost every MMA class seems to tell you another class first, take another class first and then come back to MMA, because you won't get to understand all the basics in MMA like you would if you were training in Muay Thai or BJJ. What are your thoughts, man? There are a lot of MMA gyms and MMA classes out there, and they're not all created equal. They're not all good. Not everybody understands how to teach the sport of MMA. And so what ends up happening, you have a lot of these gyms who have a structure like this. There's a boxing class and a jiu-jitsu class and a Muay Thai class and a yoga class, etc., etc. And then they'll have a couple of MMA classes where you do some random stuff and occasionally you spar. And the MMA coach is kind of thrown in as an afterthought. The MMA class is thrown in as an afterthought. And some people think, I just want to do MMA, so I'm just going to take this MMA class, which only happens, what, once a week, twice a week, who knows? Not a lot. And so you have all these noobs who don't even know how to ball their hands up into a fist, and the coach gets frustrated because he only has a couple hours a week to work with these students, and he doesn't have the time to teach them how to punch and kick and grapple. Instead, he's got these illusions. I'm going to give some fighters some game plans, and we're going to work on the nitty-gritties of all this, and he just gets frustrated trying to educate all the noobs who can't be bothered to go to the other classes and learn how to punch and kick and grapple. Does that sound familiar? Because a lot of MMA gyms have that crappy structure. Unfortunately, because it seems like that crappy structure is what gets people in the door. Like, oh, look, it's got a variety of classes. They have a boxing class, and a Muay Thai class, and a fitness class, and a yoga class, and a jiu-jitsu class. Woo, let's go. And then they actually show up and only end up doing a fraction of those classes anyway. I wish more MMA gyms were just a lot more straightforward and honest about their process, man. It's way easier to coach athletes who are already athletes to be MMA fighters. When I opened up my first gym back in the United States, I had a few guys who wrestled in high school, and these guys were pretty easy to train, because I didn't have to teach them anything about wrestling. And teaching them jiu-jitsu was pretty simple because they already had this very, very strong fundamental grappling set. At the same time, that's not the only way you can and should teach people, is just rely on the fact of pre-trained athletes and then give them some pointers here and there. In a perfect world, in a perfect gym, here's how I would do it. I would have a 2-hour MMA session every single day. And I would have the same group of people show up every single day, but you can't force that to happen. And in that class, I would focus on very specific game plans and techniques, etc., relevant to the sport of MMA. Of course, under the assumption that these guys are taking the training seriously, and outside of class, they're taking personal responsibility for their own strength and conditioning, and not relying on the MMA technique and sparring class as their only source of health and fitness. And I would prefer that they spend some time on their own, or in other classes, or even in other gyms, specializing in boxing and jiu-jitsu and wrestling and Muay Thai and all this other stuff too. That's great. That's like taking your vitamins. Before you folks in the comments are like, what, Ramsey said vitamins? Is he a Canadian? No, I'm British. Did you know that? I'm an American-born British national. And so I say some words kind of funny. Like vitamin. Yeah. So, man, Skim Shark Mike, go to all the classes you can. Do the best with what is available to you. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.